So I'll set up another station in a few minutes, maybe with like 2 different blues or something else that's similar. So you can like add a little bit of red or a little bit of pink as you're going, and it will kind of transition back and forth between those 2 colors. So you'll bring your styrofoam 1 paper at a time, and you will come and, this is your inking slate. So this is where we're going to put our ink, all right? When we first open up a tube of ink, sometimes oil, you know how dressing separates? Kind of has oil and then the rest of the stuff. Sometimes this will do that too. So if you open it up and there's a lot of oil at the top of a color, if it's very full, you're going to have to kind of help it back down and then put the cap on and just try to mix it up a little bit. Just kind of squish it around, do the best you can. If there's still a lot of oil at the top, then you're try not to do this because it needs that oil to stay liquid. If you squeeze the oil out without the ink, then this ink will get thicker and thicker and it'll be harder to move. But if you can't mix it, you can squeeze a little bit of the oil out into the trash and then try to mix it again. The first time you print, you're gonna need about the size of a quarter. And then as you continue, when you run out of ink and you need more, add more like the size of a nickel. Okay, so I'm gonna show you 2 prints actually. This is your brayer, so this is like your paintbrush. This is what takes the ink from here and evenly puts it on here. And our first job is to roll this out so it's even on the brayer. And we want to keep it in the middle of this piece of plastic. We don't want it to really go off the edges. We want it to stay in the middle. So you got to start kind of slow because otherwise it'll be really goopy, and then you've got to just change directions. So you're going to go kind of forward and sideways. You can make like a little rectangle in the middle here. We don't want to roll right off the top or the bottom or the sides. We want to keep it towards the center. And that sound is a really good sound. That sound is telling me that it's making even contact with the surface, which means it's probably even on here. And we can look at it and tell it's even on here. If it's not making that sound, it's either too dry, not enough ink, or it's too wet, too much ink, and it's like sticking and sliding around. So that's why it's important to have the right amount of ink. I'm not pushing down on this at all. I could do this with just 2 fingers. I'm just guiding this roller and telling it where to go. It doesn't take any pressure, and in fact, if I do push down, it's gonna slide instead of roll. Do you see how it slides and it gives it a different texture? So we want it to just roll across the surface. Same here. No pressure, just rolling across the surface. You can see if I just roll once or twice, not very evenly applied, right? So I'm gonna come back here. It's like dunking your brush back in more paint. I'm gonna come back here, pick up more ink, and then come over here and roll it again. And I'm gonna go back and forth between my styrofoam and the ink about 4 or 5 times usually to make sure that it's nice and even. So this is a really gentle pressure. It will kind of stick because the ink is a little sticky. So you've got to just go really slow. Don't roll quickly. Guys, can you stop talking for a few minutes? Christian, can you guys stop talking for a few minutes? I need second hour to be able to hear this. So we're rolling nice and even, nice and easy. If it sticks, don't touch it with your finger. Just kind of give the brayer a little shake and just kind of help it off. We're gonna try not to touch the surface of our styrofoam. So I think that looks pretty even. Usually your first print is gonna be the ugliest because the styrofoam, even though it doesn't look like it, it's got like little tiny holes in it, like a sponge, but very, very small. And so that first time that you print it, it's gonna kind of absorb into those holes and it's gonna print and it might show some of the color paper through. So that'll be your worst print most likely. Usually the very first one is the ugliest, and then after that printing plate gets more conditioned, like it's kind of getting used to getting printed, it prints a lot smoother and nicer. So don't be disappointed if it's a little ugly that first one. So you actually want to come away from this area because this ink here can get on your paper. So what I do is I just move to the other side of the table when I'm ready to transfer. Do you guys want to switch spots with me? You guys want to go over there? And we're going to lay our paper down, and that's why I had my paper over here to start. That way I'm not putting it anywhere near the messy ink. I'm going to pick up my styrofoam from the edges, and some people like to hold it with one hand, like that. Or some people like to do two hands and kind of like that. I like to do one hand. And we're gonna just eyeball, try to put it centered over our paper. Let me make sure this is recording. Put it centered over our paper. So before you set it down, just kind of eyeball, make sure you're in the right spot. And then you're gonna let it stick, okay? This is not centered. Do you see it's a little crooked? Don't try to slide it because it'll smear your whole picture. Just let it be wherever it lands. We can always cut the paper to make it centered later. So wherever it ends up, just give it a little tap. Then you're gonna take the whole thing and flip it. You're gonna hold it with one hand and use your fingerprints of the other hand. I like to do my 3 fingerprints here in little circles. So we're gonna rub along the edges, the middle, the sides, make sure we transfer and I'm pushing, this is the hardest I'm pushing out of all this. I'm pushing with kind of medium pressure because we really wanna press it so that the whole picture transfers as best it can. So I usually go over it a few times. Make sure I touch every little bit of the picture so it goes. And then once you feel like you've transferred the whole thing, you're gonna flip it back over. And then I like to peel from one corner. It's least likely to bend my paper or bend the styrofoam because we're gonna use this styrofoam probably 10 times. We don't want it to get cracked or bent, so we need to treat it kind of gentle. So I'm gonna pull from one corner and then I've got my picture, okay? Somebody grab me a white sheet from the front table. I'm just gonna do one more print and show you how you might switch to the other color. You guys can switch back to the other side. I'm just gonna do one more print. Oh, thank you, Sabit. So the second print, remember we don't wanna add as much ink. That first time, we've already got ink here, so we don't need quite as much this time. And if you're gonna do a second paper, you need to make sure to write your name each time you grab a new sheet of paper. So your name's on all of them. We're gonna squeeze out about the size of a quarter this time. I'm just gonna switch to pink and just show you how that looks. Some of the red is going to mix in, but some of it won't, and it'll just kind of make its own new color here. So if I stopped and started rolling right now, do you see how the ink is really, really thick right here and like not at all over here? That's why we really need to pay attention to make sure this is nice and evenly rolled before we go onto the surface. If we were gonna switch to like the other station, which I'm gonna set up a blue station or some other color, we can leave the ink that's still there on here and just go and roll the blue ink on top. Or if you're a very particular person and you don't like surprises or unexpected things to happen, you could rinse it, gently dry it with a paper towel, and then take it to the other color station. So we're just gonna roll our ink on here. And this is a little light. Probably need a little bit more ink, but I'm just gonna print it and show you what happens if you don't use enough ink.
What's the purpose? Oh, just so you can get, that's why you have to put it on there. I get it.
So this is a little light, so you'll see what happens if you print it with not quite enough ink and how that looks. All right, we're going to stick it, and then we'll flip it and rub it. This might be enough, but I don't think it is. I think it's a little too less. And you can kind of see that here. There's less ink. You can kind of visually tell as well compared to my first print. Let's just see how it looks. Oh, it's not bad. Not bad at all. So that paper might have a little less grain to it. This one might be a little bit of a more textured surface, and that might be why it printed a little smoother that time too, and why that less ink still worked okay. So you've got to make sure you've got the right amount of ink on here, and sometimes when there's already ink here, it's hard to tell if you have enough ink. So you kind of have to get down low and you'll see the texture of it on the surface of that styrofoam better. All right? Anybody got questions? All right, I'm going to let you guys get started here. I'll set up a second station if you want to wait for that. Just give me a few minutes. I've got to clear another space, okay? But anyone who would like to use that red can start. And then once you do your prints, you're going to take these to the drying mat, just lay them out, and then at the end of class, you'll rinse this in the sink, just real gentle, under the running water. Just use your fingers to get the extra ink off, and then wrap it with a paper towel and put it back in the Tupperware. Okay, because we'll do some more inking techniques later on. I'm going to show you how to do 2 colors.